Grand Theft Auto 3 is one of the pioneers when it comes to the open world series. It shaped and laid the foundation for what the rest of the GTA series would look like and built upon, but for many other open world games and series as well. It's safe to say the game is a beloved classic, which is why when this definitive edition released, so many people were so quick to point out the flaws of the definitive edition and how it does the originals a disservice. Now personally, I didn't play the original version of Grand Theft Auto 3. I had the entire trilogy already and planned on playing it eventually, but the ports were extremely outdated. Some of them needed mods to run properly and get the right resolutions. Some of them didn't have controller support, and there's a lot of maintenance required just to get the games running normally on PC, which really wasn't too big of a deal to me. But then this definitive edition was announced, so I figured I'd just wait and make a video on that instead. So while I will be talking about some of the changes the definitive edition made, I'm also going to be talking about the core of the game and some of the parts that weren't changed, and give my honest opinion on how it all is and whether or not it still holds up today. I would also like to apologize for this review coming so late. November was a chaotic month. We had Call of Duty, then Battlefield, then the Voss Insanity DLC. There was just a lot of new games to play. Oh, and then of course the game wasn't even available for the first few days on PC, so I didn't get around to playing the GTA Trilogy Definitive Edition right away, but here we are now. Now I think it's appropriate to start this off by getting all the graphical and performance related issues out the way. The presentation is definitely most people's issue with this entire trilogy, and there's some clear issues in GTA 3. First thing is the performance. I'm gonna leave my PC specs on screen, and you would think with how this game looks, by just common sense, surely it would run well. That is where you are wrong. The performance in this game was all over the place, insufferably inconsistent. In some areas of the map it would peak at around 100 to 105 FPS, while in others it would drop as low as 55 to 60 FPS. By the way, I played on 1440p in ultra settings, but regardless, this is a remaster of a 20-year-old game, and considering how this game looks, that kind of performance absolutely baffles me. I've heard even performance on consoles is terribly inconsistent as well, and I can't believe how poorly optimized this is. I'm not joking when I say I run GTA 5 and even Red Dead Redemption 2 better than this game, and I mean, if you compare the graphics of both of those games to this, it's not even close. So the fact that this game has worse performance than both is absolutely unacceptable. Now let's talk about the actual graphics themselves, which is the source of most of the hate for this game. The characters, while they may look sharper and technically have more detail, don't even really look human anymore. They look like plastic or like Legos even, with this really odd shine and design to all the characters. Some look fine, I suppose, but some look pretty horrific. I'm sure you've seen some of the memes already. Claude, the main character, looks okay. I suppose he's got more clarity and detail, but to me it almost makes him look like a completely different character. If you've watched any video about these definitive edition games, you've probably seen the terrible rain effects that make it really hard to see what you're doing. It's almost like someone's following you from above, showering you with rice, and not only is it disorientating and just plain out bad, there's also a ton of bugs involved with it. At times, rain would appear indoors in cutscenes, and when you're on the water, it just looks awful, and it's only raining in some areas while in others it's not. It's just so weird, and I don't know how Rockstar or whoever was overseeing this allowed these rain effects. In terms of the actual aesthetic and art style of the game, it's still not great. Yes, obviously it looks sharper than the original game. It has more clarity, higher resolutions and frame rates, etc. But the art style and aesthetic of the original GTA 3 is completely non-existent. Again, I didn't play the original, but I have watched a lot of videos on it just for reference, and the game has a very apparent theme and style to it. Liberty City has this bluish green tint, kind of giving it that moody feel. It makes the city stand out from your typical open world and makes it unique. It makes you feel some type of way when you're playing it. However, that art style is completely stripped out of the definitive edition. Now the city looks incredibly dull and standard. It's just clear. There's no aesthetic or unique art style. It just feels really basic and watered down. It removes that entire entire vibe the original Liberty City was going for, and while again it may have more clarity, that doesn't necessarily mean it looks and feels better. In a lot of ways, it makes the city generic. There's also a lot of issues with textures. Distant buildings look absolutely terrible in this game. They look like they're straight out of a PlayStation 1 game. Plus, there's a lot of pop-in in this game as well. There were plenty of times where I was driving and other cars would just appear out of thin air in front of me. And while that's nothing game-breaking, it's really odd and immersion-breaking. I get what they were trying to do, and they wanted to keep that cartoonish look and animations of the original game, but this remaster is clearly just uninspired. I'm not sure if they had a good understanding of why so many people loved the original GTA 3 and what made Liberty City a unique world to explore.
Liberty City is in shock today as the police and emergency services deal with the aftermath of a devastating attack on a police convoy this morning.
Now, thankfully, one thing that usually doesn't age with these games are the stories. GTA 3's story, I think, stands out a little from the others in the GTA trilogy because it's the only one with a mute protagonist. The main character's name is Claude, and like I said, he is mute, and he's sort of like a mercenary slash hired gun. Claude spends a good majority of the story working for several crime bosses and gangs spread across Liberty City, carrying out hits and jobs, stealing, killing, the typical GTA stuff. At first, I had a really hard time understanding Claude as a character. I mean, he doesn't speak, so his motives and goals are very unclear. He's kind of just doing anything anyone asks of him, no matter how difficult it is. And I think by the ending, I finally got a better understanding from Claude's character. It's not obviously ever directly stated who Claude is and what he wants, but just judging by the ending, which I won't spoil just in case you haven't played it yet, Claude is a pretty simple guy when it comes down to it. He's selfish. He's only in this life for himself. He has no allies, no loyalties, and he only cares for what benefits himself, and he only carries a grudge against those who have wronged him. At least that's how I see it. Claude doesn't need or even want anybody. He doesn't care about others. He just wants to make some money and, when possible, get revenge. And it may sound weird, but to me, this very simple character was actually really refreshing. And it reminds you that not all these protagonists are super complex and have all these different motives. Not only do I think the ending is the perfect representation of Claude's character, but it's also a befitting ending for this weird roller coaster of a game. I will definitely say though that the story can feel really slow and drag in some areas. Like I said, you're basically just a mercenary slash hitman completing jobs for people. It's pretty one-dimensional, at least for a good majority of the story, and stuff just kinda happens. It's a pretty basic story, but this game is one of the first of its kind, so I wasn't expecting anything deep or intricate from it. There aren't many standout side characters, the dialogue is ridiculous, and shows just how different games these days are. You wouldn't hear a lot of these lines in games from today, and in an odd way, it's almost charming to hear. It gives you that old school game kind of feel, and keep in mind, I didn't even play the original game, and I was still feeling nostalgic, which is really weird, but I think it's more because it represents a lot of those games from the early 2000s. The gameplay in GTA 3 Definitive Edition had some minor changes and improvements from the original, while keeping it largely the same at its core. The movement and gunplay feels pretty janky in this game. The aiming system is obviously very outdated and didn't feel very good. Not that it's necessarily bad, just very basic. The game pretty much does all the work for you. It aims and tracks enemies, it reloads for you. All you pretty much have to do is hold down the trigger. The weapons at the start of the game are pretty basic. There's a pistol, micro SMG, and shotgun. Then as you get later into the game, you start getting some of the better weapons like the AK-47 or the M16, which absolutely shreds. There's also a flamethrower and rocket launcher, as well as grenades. It obviously doesn't have the variety or the customization the newer GTA games have, but had a lot more weapons than I thought it would, and it's not bad at all for a 20-year-old game. They did also add the weapon wheel in the remaster, which is nice to have. I will say the driving felt good, however the vehicles blow up way too fast in this game. I cannot tell you how many times I blew up in a car and failed dozens of missions because of it. Oh, come on. Get out, Bob. Get out. Get out. Like seriously, it's ridiculous how easily cars blow up in this game, and they even blow up when you land them upside down. It can be brutal, and it also doesn't help that in GTA 3 specifically, you can't exit a car until you fully stop. So 50% of the time when you actually realize your car is about to blow up, it's very hard to actually exit the vehicle and escape the blast radius in time. Get out, Claude, get out, Claude, get out, get out, get out. My. There's also no automatic health regeneration in this game. To regain health, you have to find a hospital or the health tokens scattered across the map and pick them up to regen health. There's also armor you can find in the world or purchase at ammunition. The mission design is also quite outdated, which is to be expected. They're all really simple and straightforward. Kill someone, steal something, drive to specific points of the map in a designated time. It's simple and sort of the foundation for what open world missions look like today, as they continue to build upon this system and make it more complex and varied. I do like, however, that for a lot of them, you get a fair amount of freedom to complete the mission how you want. A lot of the time, it'll just tell you, hey, you gotta kill these people, and I don't care how you do it. So you get to be a little creative and complete the missions how you want. But yeah, after doing these missions for a while, it started to get really tedious, and it also doesn't help that every time you die, you have to start at the beginning of the mission. It's not like the original game where you'd have to drive all the way back to the mission, start the cutscene, and do everything all over again. But in the definitive edition, you do have to start at the beginning with the cutscene, which is skippable, but again, starting a mission all over again, especially for the longer ones, or when you were so close to completing it, can be very frustrating. GTA 3 does have the classic star system GTA is known for, although cops and the AI in general can be pretty stupid in this game. There were multiple times where I stole a car or straight up murdered someone right in front of a cop, and they did nothing, and then they get ultra sensitive when you give them a little love tap on the road and start chasing you. Basically though, once it gets to 5 stars, it's very hard to survive. The FBI starts showing up and there's roadblocks and everything, and they all have AKs, so they will blow up your car in a split second. You can go to these designated areas on the map to respray and repair your car to lose notoriety from the cops, which saved me on several occasions. Generally speaking though, the AI are terrible at driving in this game, especially the cops. I mean, they were running over civilians, crashing into other cars, driving straight into water. They're just not very smart. I also think it's worth pointing out that I had quite the number of game-breaking glitches in some of the missions. AIs getting stuck, clearly some broken scripting, people not getting in my car when I need to drive them somewhere, or the game just plain out not displaying the objective on my screen and not telling me where I need to be going. These bugs became pretty common, especially as I got deeper into the game. I have seen a lot of bugs from other people on the internet, a lot of which I didn't encounter too much of, at least not in GTA 3. A large majority of the bugs I got were either visual or involving specific missions. Liberty City is a crazy, chaotic, extremely dangerous place. Seriously, unless you're a hitman or mercenary, I don't know why you would want to live here. There are massive gang wars breaking out on the daily. Unfortunately though, Liberty City was kind of disrespected in this remaster, as I mentioned earlier, with it missing any defining aesthetic or art style, allowing it to stand out or portray a specific mood. However, there's still a lot of things I like about Liberty City. For one, there's a lot of civilian AIs making the game feel more immersive, and they're all having conversations or reacting to your actions with these ridiculous lines. And I also loved the radio stations. I'm not kidding when I say some of the most memorable moments for me in this game were just listening to the radio and all the stupid advertisements and talk shows. My favorite by far had to be Chatterbox, where this guy Laszlo just talks to random callers from Liberty City as they go on about life in the city and all these really strange topics.
I would get spanked. Nanny would spank me when I was naughty. And now Freddy needs a nanny, because when Freddy's naughty, he needs to get spanked.
Well, there's some child psychologists who probably say that spanking can be harmful to a child's emotional development.
Absolute rot, Laszlo.
It's little things like this that allow the experience and the world to stand out and feel more immersive. Not to mention, the music is great, and one might even say iconic for video games, and I can definitely see why. It all has a very unique style to it, and it's extremely catchy, especially whenever that music plays when you pass a mission. A waypoint system was also added with the definitive edition, which was great to have. I don't know what I would have done without the waypoints because I got lost enough times as it is. Grand Theft Auto 3, the definitive edition, is a very mixed bag for me. On the one hand, it's nice having an easier and more accessible way to play the game today, especially if you're on console and don't have a PS2 or original Xbox to play. On the other hand though, this remaster does not look good visually. Sure, you can now play on higher resolutions and frame rates with a clearer image, but the character models, distant textures, and even the art style are just laughable at times. I think the rain effect is the perfect representation of that. I know many people definitely expect more from Rockstar, and this is a perfect example of maybe why you shouldn't leave the remaster of some of your most beloved games to a company that did mobile ports and weren't even involved with the creation of the original games. I mean, how could they know what the original developers wanted to portray if you don't ask for their input? The whole thing just seems half-baked and lazy, and definitely not what I expect from the company that made GTA 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2. Rockstar's reputation definitely took a massive hit from all this, and while they hopefully dedicate resources to bringing this game up to the standard and polish everyone expects right now, all that is an empty promise. So honestly, I wouldn't recommend GTA 3 Definitive Edition. It's definitely not worth the $60 you pay for the trilogy, and unless you're really insistent on wanting to play these games and don't have another way of re-experiencing them, then at least wait a while for it to go on sale and some more updates for the game to come in and hopefully make it better, because right now it's in a really bad state. Even on PC, I'd be careful because this game does not run well. But that about concludes my review for GTA 3 Definitive Edition. And again, I did have some fun with the game for sure, and it was nice to finally get to experience a classic like this, but that does not at all justify the product and the asking price. Feel free to let me know what you guys think about GTA 3 specifically, or whether or not this video helped you out in some way. If you enjoyed the video, I make tons of reviews for all sorts of games on my channel. I have a whole playlist of over like 60 game reviews if you want to check that out. And also let me know down in the comments if you want me to review Vice City and San Andreas as well. I mean, I have them obviously since this trilogy is a package deal, but I'm not really sure if I'll check the others out, but I would like to eventually since I haven't played the originals for those either. Anyways, consider subscribing if you're new here, and other than that, thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day, everyone.